Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss a 15-year-old female who presented with complaints of inability to open her left eye. Before going ahead with the examination of this patient, let us first talk about the basics of anatomy and the physiology of the nerves which supply the extraocular muscles. The third nerve arises from the oculomotor nuclear complex in the midbrain and conveys the motor fibers to the extraocular muscles plus parasympathetic fibers to the pupil and the ciliary body. The nuclear centers are situated in the periaqueductal grey matter just anterior to the aqueduct of Sylvius at the level of the superior colliculus. The medial longitudinal fasciculus abuts the nucleus laterally and ventrally. As we can see in this diagram, each oculomotor nucleus consists of multiple adjacent subnuclei that innervate specific ocular muscles. Out of all the nuclei, the paired lateral nuclei are the largest and are situated anterior and lateral to the other nuclei. Their median portions are fused into an unpaired mass. As we know that the oculomotor nuclei has a superior and an inferior division, the superior division supplies the levator palpebrae superioris and the superior rectus muscle. One of the important things to remember is the superior rectus muscle is innervated by the contralateral medial subnuclei. So because of its cross innervation, a major clue to the presence of a nuclear third nerve palsy is a superior rectus weakness in the opposite eye. The inferior division of the third nerve is made by the axons of the lateral subnucleus, and it supplies the medial and the inferior recti, inferior oblique and the pupil. Now talking about the autonomic part of the third nerve. The Edinger-Westphal nuclei are the part of craniosacral or the parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system. These subnuclei provide parasympathetic innervation to both the sides. The preganglionic fibers from the Edinger-Westphal nuclei, they go to the ciliary ganglion. From there, the postganglionic fibers which are being derived from the cells in the rostral part of the subnuclei, they supply the pupillary sphincter. And the parasympathetic innervation to the sphincter pupillae muscle, these lead to constriction of the pupil in response to light. The fibers which are being derived from the anteromedial nucleus, they supply the ciliary muscle and they function in accommodation. So how does accommodation take place? The contraction of the ciliary muscle leads to relaxation of the ciliary zonules. This decreases the tension on the lens capsule and allows it to become more convex, hence accommodating for near vision. Now let us go back to the examination of our patient. We can observe there is a ptosis of the right eye. On instruction, she can close both her eyes, but the right eye cannot be opened up. Now on pulling the eyelid of the right eye, we can see that the right eyeball is deviated laterally and downwards. Now let us see how her pupil reacts to the light. On flashing the light, the right pupil is dilated, and we can see on the left side the pupil is constricted because of the contralateral consensual light reflex. The next part of examination is the ocular movements. In the left lateral gaze, there is no movement of the right eye, that is medial rectus is not functioning. In the left lateral and the upward gaze, the inferior oblique muscle of the right eye isn't functioning along with the medial rectus muscle. In the right lateral gaze, we can see that the right lateral rectus muscle is not able to abduct the eye fully, so there is partial sixth nerve involvement as well. Now observe this patient in the downward gaze. There is a slight downward movement of the eye. In the upward gaze, we can see involvement of the superior rectus and the inferior oblique muscle of the right eye. Clinically, the oculomotor nerve palsy has been divided into complete and a partial variety. In the complete, we have a closure of the eyelid and the muscles being innervated by the third nerve are severely affected, whereas in the other type, we have only partial involvement of the extraocular muscles. On the basis of pupillary involvement, it is being labeled as pupillary sparing with no involvement of the pupil, and non-pupillary sparing when we can see anisocoria because of the dilated pupil in the affected eye. Now moving on to a very important part of neurological examination, that is localization of the lesion. So after having examined this patient, where do you localize the lesion? We have seen there is an isolated right eye involvement in this patient and there is no involvement of the levator palpebrae superioris and the superior rectus muscle of the other eye. A nuclear lesion of the third nerve presents with the bilateral findings such as bilateral ptosis or elevation deficits which are absent in this patient. If there is a lesion at the midbrain or the level of brainstem, there will be involvement of the third nerve fibers affecting the ipsilateral eye along with associated neurological signs due to the nearby brainstem structure involvement. Some of the structures which are commonly involved in a midbrain lesion are red nuclei, cerebral peduncles and the cerebellar peduncles. In the next few slides, we would be talking about a few important named syndromes. The first one is the Benedict syndrome, where we have third nerve involvement along with the red nuclei involvement, leading to symptoms of the third nerve palsy along with contralateral tremors, hemichorea, hemiathetosis or hemibellismus, leading to the bouncy appearance of the patient. The second named syndrome is a Weber syndrome, where there is involvement of the third nerve fibers and the cerebral peduncle by the lesion. Here, there will be contralateral hemiparesis or hemiplegia along with the third nerve palsy. So you can remember it W for weak, that is there is hemiparesis and associated hemiplegia. The North nasal syndrome is characterized by third nerve fascicle involvement along with the superior cerebellar peduncle involvement. So there will be ipsilateral cerebellar ataxia. The Claude syndrome is characterized by involvement of the third nerve fascicles, the superior cerebellar peduncles and often along with the red nuclei involvement. So this patient is going to have features of ipsilateral third nerve palsy along with ipsilateral cerebellar ataxia and contralateral tremors. So he will have symptoms of both the Benedict's and North nasal syndrome. Another important lesion is the cavernous sinus lesions. Here we can see that there is a simultaneous involvement of the third, fourth and the sixth nerve. If the third nerve palsy is accompanied by the involvement of the fourth nerve, the likelihood of a cavernous sinus disease is very high. However, isolated third nerve involvement can also be seen. Our patient was a case of TB meningitis and the possibility of a cavernous sinus lesion could not be ruled out.